Hey everybody, welcome back to Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon Edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We are presented and hosted by Highland, Stop Your Cramp, Not Your Race, and by Polar, Chase Your Destiny. Our next guest, 11-time Ironman Champion, inducted into the Triathlon Canada Hall of Fame, author of An Unlikely Champion. Her name is Lisa Bentley. Lisa, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
I always enjoy chatting with you. You're always so upbeat and happy. I love it. Now, you're not running here.
I'm running.
You're running.
I'm running.
I love it.
In fact, I think I asked you, should I run?
Yes.
Because I pre-qualified last year, and you said, of course you should run. You should dress up like Elvis.
Yes.
And you should run. But I'm not going to dress up like Elvis. May regret that when the rain's pouring down and I'm frozen.
I was a drowned rat the last time it rained here as Elvis. I had my pompadour became a pancake. It was not a good look, but it's pretty fun. Have you run this before?
Oh yeah, I've run here a couple of times.
Okay.
I ran last year.
Yeah.
So I'm running again, and it's Boston. I'm healthy. I can do it. I am in Florida in the winter,
right.
So I have some great training partners. So I got to do it.
So what led to the book?
The book. Well, it was a work in progress for a lot of years.
I bet. It's probably one of those things you were gathering.
Well, in 2009, when I retired from professional sport, I did have a publishing company approach me to write a book, and they asked me to create a table of contents, and it was in November. And at the time, I was also doing Ironman Live. And so in November, there's Ironman Florida, there's Arizona, there's a bunch of races. So I was at all these events, and very busy, and also a publisher's asking me to submit a table of contents in chapter 1, and I remember writing chapter 1 during a run in Tempe Town before the race.
Yeah.
And I never wrote it down, and I just let it go. And then as retirement continued, I had a lot of opportunities for corporate speaking, and everyone would ask, do you have a book?
Yep, that's part of the gig.
And I wanted to expand my speaking. I love every job, if you can call them jobs, that I do. I love coaching, I love managing, but I love speaking a lot, because speaking is teaching. And I knew that if I wanted to expand the speaking part of my life, that I needed to write the book. And I had a good fortune of meeting a great man named Tom Deans, who's written a book called Every Family's Business. And it's about how you give your business to your kids.
Right.
Because that creates a lot of tension in families. And there's business decisions to be made. Do you give it to them, or do you have them buy it?
Right.
And he wrote a great book about it. So he's self-published, and he was golfing with my husband one day, and they got talking, and he said, Lisa has to write a book. And so he basically took me under his wing and taught me the trade and said, just go home and write. Don't think about it, just write. And he walked me through.
Yeah.
So he walked me through the process. I self-published the book. I hired an editor. I hired a company to do the cover. I hired a layout person. I hired a printing company. We printed, and it came off the printing press on March the 21st.
Well, what's great about doing your own thing, the reality is everybody in the industry, right? Anybody who is selling books, between the retailers, the triathlon, the magazines, anybody in the events, really, and you're going to have them for speaking gigs. It's really your own thing. It's a very personal deal. You don't need some publisher to tell you that you've got something that's credible. You've got all your history.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey, really. A lot of learning.
Yeah.
A lot of learning. I definitely had decision fatigue for January, February, and March. Every day there were multiple decisions. There was not a day where I could say, I'm not checking emails, I'm taking a day off, I'm not working. It was impossible, because there was always something coming across, like, can you proof this again? Can you edit this? This is going to print. Every time you make a change, it's $15 a change. And so we'd be reading it and reading it and rereading it. And I swore I'd never read my book again, because I've read it so many times.
Right.
But I'm actually going to read it today and tomorrow, because I think it's going to be crucial to get to the finish line in Boston, because it's about being that unlikely champion, which there's going to be 30,000 unlikely champions on Marathon Monday. It's going to be a tough day. So I am going to reread it, because I think it's going to give me the mental ammunition I need to have a great race.
When were you diagnosed in terms of what you're dealing with, cystic fibrosis? When were you diagnosed, and how did you react to that?
I was diagnosed when I was 20 years old. So we all can remember when we're 20, we're indestructible.
Right.
And so I didn't really take it too seriously. It's a genetic disease. And for people who may not know, it's a genetic disease that affects the lungs and leads to a lot of lung infections, which leads to degeneration of the lungs, which leads to lung capacity reducing, and then leads to lung transplant. and usually early death.
And you're an elite athlete.
And I'm an elite athlete.
You're an elite athlete who uses her lungs just a little bit. So that's a big issue.
It's a big issue. And my sister was the one that spurred the diagnosis. She had been coughing up blood for a long time. And they went through the whole gamut, tuberculosis, cancer, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Now, we were all sick kids growing up. If we look back to when I was 10 years old, I would be on antibiotics for 9 months a year.
Oh, my God.
And the only thing that made me healthy was my mom and dad would throw us kids into the car. We'd drive to Florida and throw us in the ocean. And the salt water would help us. And that was all the time. The pharmacist would tell my father, do you realize your daughter's been on antibiotics for 9 months? And he says, I know. And my parents didn't have a drug plan. And I'll never forget my mom saying to my dad, who at the time, this is many, many years ago, would get his paycheck in cash at the end of the week, and he'd go right to the pharmacy and pick up antibiotics for the kids. And my mom said, don't you ever feel kind of resentful that you don't go to have a beer at the bar with your friends? And he's like, I'm just happy I have the money to pay for antibiotics. And that was it.
How many kids?
4 kids.
And all were dealing with this?
3 out of 4.
3 of us were dealing with it.
3 out of 4 at CF. And but at the time, again, I wasn't really suffering terribly. I was always a sick kid, so it was nothing new. And it was interesting because I would do a VO2 max test, and I would be like just jogging. They say, you know, your respiration rate is really high. And I'm like, okay. But I had learned how to acclimatize to the disease in a sense. So I just breathe. You know, I took more breaths. That's all I did.
But you didn't know you had the disease.
No, I didn't know.
So the doctors couldn't identify what your three siblings from the same family are dealing with.
Yes, exactly. So when I was 20, I got diagnosed, and it really just meant that now I could have preventative care. So as soon as I got sick, the Cystic Fibrosis Clinic would put me on antibiotics.
Right.
So there was no 9 months of antibiotics trying to figure out which one, because there's very specific bugs that grow. So that they would target it specifically. So when a normal person gets a sickness, a doctor throws a typical antibiotic at them, amoxicillin, erythromycin. With its cystic fibrosis, they throw ciprofloxacin. Like, they throw the one that's going to hit that's going to help that bacteria.
They're not guessing.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, at the time, I looked at it as a win-win. I was going to get healthy faster.
Right.
And you know, it's been a journey for sure. I've had a lot of sickness, mainly as I got older.
Right.
I mean, I could battle it while I was racing. I was so healthy and kept myself healthy. Sport kept me healthy. And that's the thing that's the current message. I think 20 years ago, the message was, oh my God, you have cystic fibrosis, bundle up, don't go outside, don't get sick, don't expose yourself to that. Whereas the new message is exercise is great for the lungs. And in fact, when I retired from sport, my cystic fibrosis doctor said my lung function, which is how much oxygen and how you breathe, will probably decrease now that I was giving up elite sport, because I wasn't going to be using my lungs in the same way. And it's true. I have a new normal now. My lung function has decreased. I did get quite sick in 2010, and my lung function dropped to 56%.
Oh my God!
And that was a rough year for sure.
Yeah.
I was hospitalized and was at IV for 5 weeks. And it took a couple of years. It got up to 70%, then 75%. And that sounds great if your kids get 75% on an algebra test.
If you're an elite athlete.
But 75% is about a huge water bottle full of oxygen per breath that I'm lacking at 75 to 80%. So it was a struggle. But the body's an incredible thing. It adjusts. And all of a sudden, 80% didn't feel so bad. I mean, I did Boston at 80% a few years ago, and ran 249. So you can acclimatize to anything, and you can accomplish anything, and you can achieve anything. It just takes a bit of work.
While you were racing, were there times where you were thinking, man, if I had the lung capacity of some of these other gals? I mean, you won 11 titles with that, dealing with that. Did you ever have that, gosh, I just wish?
There were times when I had the just wish, but as I matured as an athlete, I would say from 2002 onward, I never did the just wish. I really did see CF as a gift, because it gave me a greater platform. After I'd won a couple Ironmans, so now we're in 2001, say, I really needed a higher purpose. And I think that this is something that we all can struggle with, is achievement versus fulfillment. And achievement is winning, winning, winning. Fulfillment is having something to take away with that win. And it wasn't until I met a family that have 2 kids with CF, young kids, that were very sick.
Right.
Like, not like me, very sick with CF. And I met them, and I do talk about that story in my book. The mother ended up doing her first Ironman, which was Ironman New Zealand. She did it to raise money for kids with CF so that they would have access to sport.
Right.
And she went on and did Hawaii as well. It was after meeting that family that I said, this is my platform. This is why God made me have CF and be an elite athlete, because the message is hope. The message is not, you're going to die. The message is not, you're going to have a lung transplant. The message is that there's hope. And every time I did a race, I was on display. I was hope on display. And so when I was in a race, and even if it wasn't going according to script,
right,
I couldn't quit, because I was racing for every single child with CF that could not race. And I was racing for those families so that they would have hope that their little child that was on their machines with lung capacity of 75%, that they were going to grow up to be like I was, running around the world in a bathing suit. And so, yeah, there were moments I thought, oh, I wish I wasn't sick right now, and I wish I was at full capacity, and I wish I could go and storm through Hawaii and win. Yeah, of course. But I learned to be really happy with who I was,
right,
and that CF was a blessing, and it was my platform for those families that have CF to say it's okay. I mean, you know, the incredible thing, I mean, and I haven't shared this with anybody, is since I wrote my book, I've had 2 emails from families. One of them said in December 2017, the doctors told me my baby has cystic fibrosis. And I Googled celebrities with cystic fibrosis, and I saw your name, and now we have hope. And I was overwhelmed. And then just a month ago, I got a similar email. My daughter's 4 days old and has just been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. So just picture a mom and a dad with an infant child.
Right.
And they are diagnosed with a debilitating, life-threatening lung disease. And so I look at that, and it doesn't matter if I sell 1 copy of this book,
right,
or 1 million. There's 2 families there that have tiny itty-bitty children, and they have hope. And
they have a role model. They have a role model, someone's been successful. And it's funny, because I look at sport, and we go back to, you know, Jim Howley doing Ironman with a T-cell count of 3, and showing that someone with AIDS could do the Ironman, and all of a sudden, exercise, which was considered something to be awful for him because he had a disease that ate muscle mass, and now he was working out, which could compromise his muscle mass. All of a sudden, his T cells went from 3 to 800 to 1,000, and medical science sat up and took notice, and this guy 20 some years later is still alive and being an advocate for exercise and AIDS.
Amazing.
And we saw it with diabetes, and we saw it this year at Ironman with pancreatic cancer with Mike Levine. He was told he had 6 months to live, and he got through 2.4 miles of a swim and 53 miles of a bike ride, and his doctor, you'll love this, his doctor goes, you know, I have to think differently now, and your doctor's thinking differently, because this guy had pancreatic cancer in the past, he would just go away to a hospice and die.
Yeah.
Now I have to think about, when do I take him off chemo before he goes and does the Ironman? Because we only took him off 3 weeks before. Next year we'll take him off 3 months before, so his arteries and veins don't get mushy, and he's able. So we're changing perceptions of what people can do with these diseases through endurance sports.
And you
Sport
do
is so
that.
Powerful.
You do that with the Challenged Athletes Foundation, and that's why I love hearing about your incredible success with that, because you give those kids, those people, new life when they lose a limb or they can't do their sport because of injury. And that's what sport is about. Sport is about life and living, and we all need a little of that. And it doesn't have to be the Boston Marathon. You know, we had the 5K today. It can be anything, movement and being with people.
People underestimate the power of sport and what it does in terms of just making you feel good about yourself and all the rest of it. So the book is out now, and you're going to be speaking around the country, around the world. And what's nice is you already got your speaking gigs, so now you have your book as well.
Yes,
So people can pre-order the book, and then you bring X number of books there, and boom, I love that.
Yeah, no, it's good fun. I love it, and it was a pretty neat process, because I got to revisit so many stories from the past and things from the past, and really I trying to teach people the tactics for successful living. Not to be a great triathlete, not to be a great athlete, it's to be a great person and be great with what you have, whatever that happens to be. And because that's all any of us are expected to do.
Exactly. when you look back at your career, is there one race that sticks out? And we got 11 championships, but sometimes athletes be like, the championships are, the wins are great, but there was one race that meant more to me.
I had a lot of even those because I really feel like I did race for fulfillment as opposed to achievement, and so many were so fulfilling. But probably my last Hawaii Ironman was incredible. I had never planned to do it. I crossed the finish line at Subaru Ironman Canada 2007,
okay.
And I had just come off a huge injury with my Achilles, which was related to CF because of the antibiotics caused degeneration of the Achilles tendon. So I had missed 3 months of running. My long run was 90 minutes. I only was running 3 days a week as opposed to 9 workouts a week. I was now running 3 times a week. And it was a struggle, there's no question. I got across the finish line at Subaru Ironman Canada. I won the race, which was its own miracle.
Yeah.
And I said to my husband, Dave, at the finish line, that's it.
Done.
I can't do another Ironman, I'm not doing Hawaii. And I opened my inbox that day, and it was from a mother with a child with CF. And she said, Lisa, I know that you're injured, but I really hope you're doing the Hawaii Ironman because Carter, my son, 6-year-old son who has CF, has written to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And his wish is to cross the finish line with you at the Ironman World Championships.
Oh my God.
And Lisa, I hope that you can do it because they granted his wish. And so I did it.
And did he come across the line with you?
Yes, he came across the line with me, and that pretty much was a career highlight. When I was a teacher, and I resigned from teaching in 1999 to pursue sport full time.
Right.
And when I did that, my mother was upset. She said, Lisa, you've been given a gift to teach children and to impact children, and now you're going to be an athlete full time. You're not using your talents that you were given. I said, Mom, I don't know how, but I promise that I will have impact on people through sport. I don't know how, but I promise I won't lose my gift to be with people.
Right.
And when I crossed that finish line with Carter at the Hawaii Ironman 2007, it was a struggle for me, but seeing his face, and we touched at the finish line, which is something 2 people with CF never do because of the transmission of the disease, of infection. And I didn't really even think about it because that's what sport is.
Sure.
We never think about anything when we're doing sport. We get caught up in the emotion. And I leaned over and I touched his face with both my hands and looked at him, and someone captured that picture. And to this day, I don't know who took that picture, but it really exemplified everything. So that was a career highlight. It wasn't my best finish, but it really was my best finish.
You also were part of a great Canadian era with Laurie Bowden and Heather Fuhr and Carol Montgomery and yourself. There was so many great Canadian women out there racing, and I'm sure you guys inspired that whole next generation. How fun was it to race with those guys?
We had a great time racing. We were cheering for each other. We were trying to beat each other, but we were cheering for each other. There was one year in Hawaii, I believe Laurie won, Heather was 3rd and I was 5th, or maybe Heather was 2nd and I was 5th, but we were all in the top 5 or 4. And I'm trying to run them down, they're trying to run me down. We're all trying to kill each other and beat each other, but boy, oh boy, we just wanted everyone to be successful. But when we got out there, we're cheering for each other.
Of course.
So I'm trying to catch them, but I'm like, Laurie, you're in the lead, like, way to go, you know, and then I get back to business of trying to catch her again. But it was beautiful because we all wanted each other to do well.
Right.
And we genuinely, it wasn't fake, it was genuine. And we should have been on a milk calendar or something because it was pretty great.
That's very cool. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished. Again, the book, An Unlikely Champion, our author, Lisa Bentley. Again, Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon Edition. We're presented and hosted by Highlands. And by the way, Highlands, their entire team is teachers. Their whole theme is teachers. They surprised a number of these teachers in their classrooms that they were running Boston. Is that the coolest thing?
That's amazing.
Highlands, stop your cramp, not your race. And by Polar, chase your destiny. Hold on, everybody. We will be right back.